Hey, babe.
Yeah, babe.
Who we here with today?
Come on! It's Steve, a.k.a.
Outside Dave.
Man.
Outside
One of the
Dave.
most beloved characters from the New Girl universe.
Gather round! I like that! Yeah!
Yes! Listen around.
Mess around!
That's what I'm talking about. All night. Look at that.
Hey, messing around. I mean, when fans watch the show, there are memorable moments, there are memorable characters, there are memorable lines, and I think you are responsible for about 50% of that.
Yeah.
It's the show I get recognized for the most.
Yeah.
Truly?
Yeah. Hands down, not even close.
People
And
love
I've been
you.
a regular on shows.
Yeah.
And this is still the one where people come up and quote me lines.
Yeah.
A lot of which I don't remember at all. Because
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff was alts. You know, this is a show that I was like, wow, you show up and you have your lines memorized and you go into your trailer in the morning and there's 2 pages of alts.
Yes. Yes. We had this conversation. We were discussing a prior episode
The
that you were
parking
in.
spot episode.
Yeah, that was my first one.
Was that your first one?
Mm-hmm.
That's the introduction of Outside Dave? Because you're asleep on the car, on Jess's car. And
Yes.
she's like, can I get you anything? And you say, coffee, 2%.
2% latte.
And,
or something
we
like
were
that.
like, was that like improv or was that in the pack of alt?
That was improv. The original line was just, she's like, Dave, can you move? And I screamed something at her, and that was the original line.
Yeah.
And then I think Zoe improvised, I'm going to go get a coffee. You want anything? And I was like, 2%.
That's really funny. I said to Lamorne, even though I know the alts that we all used to get handed all the time, when we
many.
did the recap of Parking Spot, I was like, I feel like he improv that. And it made me laugh so hard because
yeah.
it's so specific. And the refined taste of the unhoused of LA. Oat milk only.
That was great. That was I was supposed to be one episode and done.
Really?
Yeah. And then I think Zoe after that, that took like 10 minutes. You guys were a well-oiled machine by the time I got there. Like Outside Dave scenes were never more than like 20 minutes worth of shooting.
Holy crap.
And then I remember Zoe going, oh my God, that character's so funny. We got to have him back.
Ooh.
And that led to like many more episodes.
Interesting. I didn't know that's how that all happened.
Okay, folks. So
How lucky
today
for us.
we are reviewing the episode First Date.
First Date.
Directed by Lynn
The
Shelton.
late, great Lynn Shelton.
Lynn Shelton. Written by J.J. Philbin and Berkeley Johnson.
Oh, big hitters. All the big hitters.
Yeah. Also in this episode, and I want to start by saying this episode was I'm going to say the start of a very funny individual also by the name of Ron Funches. Ron Funches is also on this episode, and I shot him a text and I said, is there anything you remember about this episode in particular? And he wrote me this note, which was very lovely. He said, my main memory of that episode is Lynn Shelton. When I auditioned, that role was not shirtless. And when I showed up and realized part of the joke was that I was fat and dirty, I was very self-conscious. Lynn saw that and came over to me and told me that I could either shrink or own the situation, and made me feel so powerful and funny. And the first time I made you laugh, I felt powerful and knew I wanted to act and wanted to get my health together so I could be more than the fat homeless guy. And I remember shooting there's a flashback scene where I'm on a date and he comes up and he starts singing Father Figure. And I didn't know what was going to happen or who was I didn't know. And when he started doing it, when I tell you, I kept breaking characters so much that we kept having to redo it. I was in tears.
It's so funny.
When you see the actress in front of you, you can see her break. And she turns her head and she covers her mouth and her face. And I'm like, oh, she can't hold it together.
Yeah.
And she probably felt a lot of pressure too to be like, I can't screw up this scene. This man is fully in song. You know, it's different than I think when you're like a regular on a show or whatever the thing is. But I watch her fully break because they gave him so much airtime. The 2 times he's the tag as well.
Yeah, he's the tag as well. So that was his first.
Man,
big,
that's
big
also
thing,
just the power of Lynn. I have so many stories too about her just being able. She could just see when you felt vulnerable and you didn't have to really say anything, and she would show up and somehow empower you in that feeling. There's a reason why everybody, I have goosebumps talking about it right now.
That was my first time working with Lynn, and we became great friends. Like
Really?
she was, when my mom passed away, Lynn was like really responsible for keeping me sane. And like,
Really?
Yeah, it was during COVID. And so Lynn and I there's an app called Marco Polo where you video each other. And Lynn would like every day check in on me.
Man.
And yeah, she was the best.
That's great, man.
She has such a giving heart, man. We love her. We miss her. We're so lucky that we like got to be in her world for as long as we did.
So you down to break down this episode with us?
Absolutely.
A little bit? You know, we're going to go through kind of beat by beat a little bit, and also just, whatever you feel like.
Yeah.
So in this episode, Nick and Jess, they go on their first official date.
Yep.
However, they flip-flop more than a politician around election year. And it's they don't know if it's a date or not. And it's a whole stupid thing they do. Meanwhile, Schmidt and Winston, they're afraid they will lose Nick, because Nick is the glue that holds their friendship together. And that will happen, they're afraid, if he starts to date Jess. So they come up with an elaborate plan to sabotage the date. That includes fruity drinks, stealing a bear from the zoo, and Outside Dave.
That's right.
Everyone's favorite homeless guy. So let's dive right into it. Let's start from the top here. Winston tries to sneak into his room. The phone charger.
Charging cable. That is so mental for a premise. Like,
Yes.
they have one phone charger.
Yes. I was like, what?
Well,
When you buy a phone, it comes with one.
Yes.
well, she was saying, Jess says it's a bonding thing for all of them.
Right.
But then also like a joke that they're not all really doing it except for Winston.
Yeah.
I'm like, the fact that he's trying to, like, on the low, like on this, like, bro, just put one in your room. No one's gonna know.
But that's what she's like, I have 9 phone chargers in my phone in my room or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And Jake says his phone doesn't even take that kind of charging cable.
That's exactly right.
What I found interesting about it is that the guys take action. They try to fight Winston. They like wrestle him down
Down to the floor. Yeah.
and then Jess is like, I got him. He's like, no, you don't.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk away slowly. There's no problem.
Okay. My favorite line of that is when Schmidt goes, "You can't outrun the Jewish."
Yeah.
The Jewish. Yeah.
And then he does the run. Like, you're just going, why? So much? You're going to go so far with this ridiculous run. We're almost going backwards. You're going so slow.
Yeah.
Classic Max.
Nick and Jess, they stand in front of each other, not sure what to say. Nick puts his hand on Jess's boob.
By the way, I also forgot that ever happened. What a move.
Upper boob.
Upper boob.
Underrated, he said.
Yes.
And by the way, did you notice the hand positioning kept flipping? Like the continuity wise, you're like, oh, they did a lot of takes of this.
A lot of boob touches in this episode because
lot
they could
of
not
them.
cut together.
Oh, yeah.
Unless it was very Kubrick of them.
Yeah.
Like, we're just going to keep making everyone feel slightly uncomfortable
Yeah.
through the cut.
It was if initially, because he says he's an under boob guy.
Yeah.
Right. But initially my question when it was happening, I was like, is that a TV thing? Like he can't.
It must
I
have,
don't think
right?
he could have grabbed her boobs.
Yeah, I was
I'm
like-
sure that's probably what was wanted. And it's like, you can't. So I'm just going to touch the upper part of your chest because that's as far as we can go in network television
That's
and
the
then
difference-
roll with it.
That's the difference between network television and like I was
HBO,
watching
yeah.
I was watching Anything But You the other day and they was touching butts and boobs.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was like, whoa, Glenn Powell is going for it.
Oh.
Whole butt out.
No.
Yeah.
I have not seen.
You haven't seen it?
No.
Well.
I'm just watching this show. I'm recapping this show. That's what I've been doing.
A lot of episodes.
A lot of episodes,
Oh
man.
Jess shows Cece what Nick did. And Cece says it looks like the Pledge of Allegiance. That can't be which can be sexual.
Hand on heart. I got it.
Okay. Okay. So what else? We got Jess explains to Cece, it's Nick. He's never going to tell her how he feels. It's always going to be awkward. and she needs to stop thinking it's going to change. Now, here's what I found interesting about this back and forth with them. There's so much, typically in a show, there's a lot of buildup. The will they, won't they, and then it happens, or it doesn't happen. In this show, there's a lot of like, oh, we kiss, then nothing happens, then they have their own thing. Well, I'm not lying to you. I got so confused. I was like, didn't they already do it? Aren't they already together in this? And I was like, oh my God, they're not. Like,
no, but this was, I think, like the gift of like Liz Merriweather and I think why people loved the show and responded so much. It was just so much of that was like real life and real relationships. It's messy. You made out, then no, we shouldn't do it. Oh gosh, then we're back in. As opposed to just like some rom-com comedy where it is just the will they, won't they tension forever, and then in the final season, in the final episode,
it's
they
relationship
smooch.
time. Yeah,
you're like, what? But that's not real life. These are like people in their late 20s. They're living together. It's a bit of a disaster.
Yeah.
What? There's all these characters. We're talking with outside Dave, but there's all these characters that are mainstays for New Girl.
I know, the Tran.
Greatest, such a great, happy, smiley, silent character.
And the interaction between Nick and him is always some of the funniest stuff because he's not saying anything.
By the way, what a dream role. Dream role.
That and Coma. Oh my God. You're
just
mute.
To be able to sit there, smile, and you can also tell, again, it's when you know someone really well, how happy Jake Johnson is in that scene. He gets to sit there, ramble, be weird.
Own the scene.
The scene. But he loves he talked to us about this before. He was like, loves being in a 2-shot with somebody. He likes to bounce off. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you could just see why that, I think probably, I bet you it's a similar story with the Tran character. Probably was supposed to be a one-off. And then Jake was like, no. Yeah. Keep this going.
That was a gem.
Then you get to see into his mind a little bit. And then he practices asking Jess out on a date with Tran, which, by the way, comes effortlessly, unlike when he actually is in front of
awkwardly at her door.
Which is really fun. He feels more comfortable with Tran.
Yep.
Folks, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to dive into this episode. There's lots to talk about. We'll be back.
Before we get into the storyline, right, which is you guys just trying to break this tension of Nick leaving the glue together. You know, he's the glue that keeps you and Winston and Schmidt together. And talk about this incredible episode with Outside Dave. Steve, tell us, how did you get on the show? Do you remember how you were asked? Do you remember what it was like? Was there casting? Yeah. How did that go down?
So that first episode, the parking spot, a guy I used to do sketch comedy with around LA, Fred Goss, was directing that episode. And they were about to start casting it. And he approached Aaron O'Malley, who was the EP of a show I used to be on called the Sarah Silverman Program. So I already knew Aaron. And Fred said, hey, I know this guy, Steve Agee, who might be good. And Aaron was like, he's perfect. They just offered me the part. It was, again, one episode. And it was like one line. So it was like not like a crucial part. And it
stuck.
Zoe loved it. I think the crew loved it. And my experience was, I think the writers especially loved writing for Outside Dave. Because you can just be so weird and just out of left field with him.
So let's talk about this episode in particular. Do you remember anything specifically about this episode? There was a lot happening.
That's a big Outside Dave episode because he becomes Inside Dave.
Yeah, usually Outside Dave episodes, there is a pattern. It's close up of someone like Schmidt pouring out his heart. He's got a conundrum. He's like, I don't know what to do with it. They're treating me like I'm a child, and it's a very deep, intense conversation. And then they cut to he's sitting across the table from me at an outdoor cafe, and I say something insane, and then it goes to a commercial. That was my scenes were usually like 15 to 20 minutes of shooting.
Wow.
Very little. I showed up one day. Outside Dave was a mess, and I showed up one day, and hair and makeup goes, "You look great." There was one, and I think it was a scene with you where I'm like giving CPR to a bug or something.
Yeah, you're like,
and I showed up and they were like, all right, you look good. Like, they didn't do anything to me. I had a big beard because I was shooting something at the time. And yeah, but most of my scenes were just there were very few multiple days with me on set.
And did they just let you go and improv a bunch of stuff after you'd done the big alt pack?
Yeah, we would always do the line as it was written, and then I would sometimes throw something out. A lot of times it was the writer. In fact, that scene with Schmidt at an outdoor cafe, it cuts to me, and I've got a little action figure in my pocket, and I take it out, and there were 1,000 lines of me, what this guy is. And I think it was Matt Fussfeld and Alex who gave me the line. His name is Connor, and he went to SUNY Binghamton. I didn't know what SUNY Binghamton was, but yeah, that it was very, very quick stuff with Outside Dave. This was great because it was like I was there for a couple days.
A couple days, I would say. Hannah, talk to us about let's dive into this actual moment. We're gonna go back and we're gonna talk about what's happening with some of the A story, but I definitely want to dive into some of the actions of Outside Dave in the hijinks. How do we get here? Help me set this one up.
Well, how Outside Dave becomes Inside Dave. Do you remember that? Do you remember how the story goes?
Yeah, so you guys come to me outside and you're like, Dave, what would it cost to get you to break up a date? And I'm like, $4 million and something else.
And they discuss.
And my favorite part is you two turning away.
And he goes,
and Max going, I don't have $4 million. Duh, you have roommates. Yeah, of course you don't have $4 million. And then you're like, how about 2 sandwiches and something else?
Wait, home-cooked sandwiches.
Home-cooked sandwiches.
Also the greatest thing, home-cooked sandwiches.
My counter is one sandwich. And then we later cut to you guys letting me into the loft, and I immediately knock something over and run to the bathroom.
You pull down that. So what's funny about that particular, what do you call it, the little stand with all the stuff on it? It's like a football, there's a bunch of stuff. They were really particular about continuity of that thing.
Yes,
because there are times
true.
where like I'd improvise a bit where I take something off and they go, oh, we got to make sure they take pictures of it that stays the same way. Yeah. And I found it so funny that you immediately come in and throw it on the ground.
Trash it.
I don't even know if that was in the script. I think Lynn told me. I think Lynn told me like knock something over when you run away.
You knock down pretty big.
That's a lot of continuity right there.
One of my favorites, and I don't even know how they shot it, because Jake talked a lot about in the episode Pepperwood, when he's trying to break into the thing, the stunt. He didn't actually do the stunt. Obviously,
when he's breaking into Edgar's shed.
Do you remember filming when Schmidt had to come down from the thing and film that? Talk to me about that day.
So your bathroom, which was amazing on the show, had urinals.
Yeah,
like that is so crazy.
Yeah.
I go in, lock myself in, and Max hears me like using his razor and stuff, and he is freaking out, like so, OCD and neurotic. And so he's like, I got to get in there. And so he goes up to your roof where there's a skylight, and he lowers himself in. And you just hear from the outside him screaming as he lowers himself in. And they did a reverse.
Okay.
There's a reverse of Max like hanging.
Right.
I don't remember them shooting that, but it's a practical shot that they did.
Yeah, because I was so confused when I was again, because I didn't remember the episode. So I was like, "Where's the thud?" Because you think he's just going to fall through, and it's not. It's only when Winston then kicks the door in, and then we see that you're holding him.
I've got his leg and one leg, and I'm trying to shave him.
Here's my favorite part about that episode. There's always in a future episode I do this. There's a bit that I've always wanted to just do, because I used to write a lot of sketch, and I've always wanted to do this bit. I never did it, where you would show a line of urinals, and you show just the backs of men pissing, and then there's one that's blank, and then you go back and you lower it and you realize some guy's taking a shit in there. Like, I've always wanted to do that, and
Steve made your dreams come true.
And I just love the fact that you're sitting there and
Eating a sandwich.
This man's dropping a deuce in
how
there.
many gross things can you just kind of
many.
put together? Just the eating in the bathroom.
Yeah. And I love that you run in to save Schmidt, and he's like, catch me, and you do not catch him.
No.
And he's still like, oh, you saved my life.
Yeah.
They're bonded now.
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
There's a lot of there's a lot of like flash forwards and flashbacks. So we talked about this in another episode where Winston, another moment where I find it to be, well, the New Girl writers, I think, connect the dots pretty well. Where he's, and even in this point, I'm not 100% sure we've established him as a shitty prankster. When he's talking about catching a.
Come on now.
I can't. I'm not. I don't know if I'm.
Because so we have this thing. There's this big fan theory, Steve. Just so you know that in every single episode of New Girl, there is a mention, a photo, someone says it of the bear, a bear.
Yes.
Any bear. There's just this thing because it's so.
There's a bear mentioned in this one.
I know. Well, I would just like to say in season 2, I have struggled a little bit to find the bear. I believe this fan theory deeply. I have struggled a lot of it. And so when I watched this episode, I genuinely screamed out loud because he gives me so much shit for it. That there's no truth to this theory. And it is Winston.
It is, yeah.
That says the word bear.
Break into a zoo, steal a bear, shoot that bear full of Hep C.
Hep C, that's right.
Yeah, to break up the Nick Jess.
And then Max is like, we wouldn't even need to give it Hep C.
Yeah.
Just a bear in a room in a restaurant would be fine.
But it's the too big, too small prank world that's slowly being established.
Right.
And I don't even think intentionally. They're just like, this is a weird, fun thing. And then they fully lean into it because it's just so funny.
So let's go back. Let's talk about this date, or not date, or them just going out to eat.
Well, he wasn't very clear when he asked her at the door and just had some words fall out of his
Get
mouth.
food
Yeah.
or something. Very bizarre.
And then gets dressed. The boys dress him, and I guess Winston is like a low-key barber.
Yeah, you got to trim, which is true to life, because we talked about this when we had Jake on the podcast. His hair, he looked like he was wearing like a helmet, like a circular helmet. Yeah, and I was like, man, what?
And you did in real life help him with his hair situation.
Is that true?
Yeah,
Yes.
I told him, I was like, you got to talk to the hairstylist. I was like, I think she's laying your hair down too much here. You got to have it lower here and a little bit of.
Yeah.
And then once that happened, he became a sex symbol. So,
and they wrote it into the show. They're just like, let Winston help him with the hair.
Oh, 100%.
Let Schmidt dress him, which I also feel like, I have a feeling that Max would help Jake. We would have to go and do press things and be like, can you just, what are you going to wear?
sure.
What are you going to do?
So-
Take the clogs off, man.
Clogs. The Crocs.
Yeah, get the Crocs off your feet.
So they're outside of this place, and here's the part that I don't know why it's a stupid comedy, and it pissed me off that
What?
he kept getting jaywalking tickets, and all he did was step in the street.
By the way,
I was
it's
like,
real.
He didn't fully go across.
He didn't fully go across.
By the way,
Do you have to go
that
to
is the
completion?
great Brian Stack as the cop, who's a writer on Conan O'Brien.
Ah,
You would recognize him on because the writers on Conan used to always write themselves into the sketches.
Right,
So you
yeah.
would know Brian and now he writes for Colbert.
okay.
And I have a very specific memory of showing up one night to shoot, and I knew Brian really well, and he looked mortified, and I go, hey, how was shooting? And he's like, oh my God. He goes, I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. He's like, and they have me on this motorcycle. And he goes, we did a take where I get off the motorcycle and it fell over. He goes, I knocked it over. And he goes, I am so horrified by that. And that's the take that they use.
By the way, it was one of my biggest laugh out loud moments because you can see like just the way he's playing this character. He's the energy of him trying to be like a good cop, and he knows he's going overboard, but he's just trying to do a really good job, but he's so nervous, but maybe that's how he really
There's
felt.
no coverage. 'Cause it's the back of him going, trying to pick the motorcycle up going, oh dear. He's very like Wisconsin Midwestern. So that was a mistake that they kept, but he felt so horrible. He's like, I don't know why they hired me. He's like, I think I might get fired. He felt terrible.
But no,
Comedy
so
gold.
funny.
It was
now it's
gold.
iconic.
Yeah.
Gold.
That's why you
So
never, this is for any actors that are like listening, is like you never break in a scene. Even if you make a mistake, even if it all goes wrong, even if you're in your own head of it, sometimes it's the best stuff because it's so real.
Oh, yeah.
And you made you feel, even though this cop had just been like so terrible to them.
Yeah.
They say your heart went out to him in that moment because it was authentic. I didn't know that. That's amazing.
There's a new law, I think, in Los Angeles County that you can jaywalk as long as it's safe to do so.
Oh,
Love
did they
it.
change it?
They changed it.
Let's go.
They changed it.
As soon as we're done recording.
Yeah.
We can go run across Hollywood Boulevard.
But here's the thing: you just said he just stepped into the road. For it to be called jaywalking, do you have to like
Yeah, you'd be crossing
like a
the
little
road, I
chicken?
thought.
You got to make it to the other side.
In my head, it's at least halfway.
Yeah.
I don't know.
be.
I've got made up rules, but I'm like, if I get halfway, clearly I'm trying to.
What if you just get out of your car on the driver's
That's what I was
side and then
saying. He
drop
was-
a pack of gum and you're just like going to get like what qualifies as jaywalking?
I mean, we should, I guess, text Berkeley right now.
I know. Because I did the math on that. That's like, I think over $1,000 in tickets he got.
Well, that was the part that
Because
made
he was
me
like three something.
Yeah, every
He got
single time.
$300.
It was $1,000. He pays which for Nick is like might as well be $4 million.
Yeah.
It felt so crazy, and that's why it made me laugh so much at the end of the episode when he realizes there's valet.
Yes.
But he would never pay for valet because he's so broke, and because he didn't pay for valet, he paid $1,000 in tickets, which also feels very LA. They find a way to make you feel like you screw up with your parking and get that money.
This restaurant, Beso.
Yeah, where is that?
That's in Hollywood. That's in Hollywood. I've been there a couple of times.
From
That was-
Beverly, right?
No, it was,
Was that
on
the
Hollywood
legit
Boulevard.
sign of the restaurant? Was it actually Beso?
Yeah, that was Eva Longoria's restaurant.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. We shot there again,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah,
in the
that does
final
sound
season. That's
familiar,
funny.
Yeah. And Dermot Mulroney, fancy man, was in this one.
The fancy man, the only man we both ever loved.
Yeah. And I love when he's on the show. This one was interesting because what I didn't realize, because his hair, sorry to keep going back to hair, he had the long old school, like 80s Wall Street.
Yeah.
Yes,
Haircut
Wall
going on.
Street. That's it.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I that was shocking. That made me feel, and I don't know why this thought went through my head, was that we shot this show like
A long time ago.
in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, it might as well have been. It was a long time
Great
ago.
corporate Wall Street. Yeah.
100%.
The thing that made me laugh too is when he approaches the table and they're all talking. And then he's on a date, and right at the, I just related to it so deeply as a human being. Right at the end, she goes, "And I'm Brandy."
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that
We've
was
all
awesome.
been there. Where
Oh,
you're
yeah.
just like, and also I'm here.
Yes, that was awesome.
Has any of
made me laugh.
When I watch this episode and on this podcast, we talk a lot about personal experiences with the subject matter of this show. Any weird dating things in your life? Any awkward will they, won't theys in your personal life? Anything you can relate to in with this that pertains
First
to Nick
date
and Jess?
storyline. Yeah.
Not on a level of this show,
Yeah.
because obviously everything's heightened. But yeah, I've gone on like setups, like blind dates, which are the worst.
Yeah.
And you're like, what was my best friend thinking that I would get along with this person who I have nothing in common with? And now I'm sitting across from this person for an entire meal and like trying to find some common ground to talk
100%.
about.
Oh gosh,
That's about as bad as it's gotten for me.
I have, so there's a friend of mine, and love her to death. Her name is Margot Bingham. Margot, if you're listening, I love you. However, recently in Atlanta,
never good to say. However,
well,
I love you.
But-
however,
she goes, Lamorne, I'm going to set you up with someone. I'm going to set you up on a date. And she goes, I'm not going to tell you anything about this woman. I'm not going to tell you her name. I'm not going to tell you her race. I'm not going to tell you what,
She's like, just
what
trust
she
me.
likes,
Political
her
views.
job, nothing. And I was like,
it's Tom Petty free falling.
who the fuck you think I am? I was like, I
And
do have some
you went?
things that I might
You
want.
still did it?
You
No,
showed
not
up?
yet.
Okay.
Because she keeps she's like, once you get back to LA, she lives in LA. She's like, once you get back to LA, I'm gonna set it up. So let me know. And I have been hesitant to let Margot know that I'm back in LA because I'm.
That's a hard no.
Don't do a dinner. Please don't do dinner.
It's a hard no, but also in my head, I'm like, maybe it's a famous person, and that's why they're not telling you.
Maybe it's finally going to happen for you, Lamorne. You've been putting it out there.
Zoe Kravitz, what's up?
Maybe it's finally going to happen.
Do you know her?
No, I was at a friend's Halloween party this past Halloween, and she walked past me as Rosemary from Rosemary's Baby.
I thought you were going to say Rosa Parks.
And she was with Channing Tatum, who was a giant baby.
Oh boy!
Oh my God, that's so funny.
And it wasn't.
You have no chance. They're funny.
It was two people walking past me at a very crowded party, and I thought, "Oh, there's two old friends that I haven't seen in a long time."
Okay,
because I recognized them,
Sure.
Right?
But not enough to put them in context, and so I didn't say anything because I was like, I'm gonna fuck up somebody's name. And then later, someone was like, "I think the best costume was Zoe Kravitz and Channing Tatum."
You were like,
And you went,
And I go, "That's who that was. I don't know them at all
personally at all."
I will say, okay, so my date, the way I could relate to this episode is that, so my whole thing is like, I've never been on a date. Like, no one's ever asked me out on a date. And we've gone out on a date and like
Never been on a
dated
date.
until we've been together. Well, here's the thing, Steve, okay? Is that when I started New Girl, I remember the guys on the show, Zoe would come up to me like, "Oh, I met so-and-so. They said they used to date them." I was like, I've never been on a date. Like, I've never been on a date. And then it started to happen more and more. And it would be people that I'd be just like, "Oh, like you and I are like, we're friends." And they would go for coffee. They'd be like, "Want to go get a coffee?" I'd be like, "Sure." We go get a coffee. And then I'd go
Whoa.
home. But on their mind,
Just like the show.
just like the show, they were like, well, and so there's all these people walking around in these streets being like, I dated Hannah and I was never on a date, never knew about a date, never understood this whole thing was a date. So I've now had many friends be like, "Hannah, you've dated a lot of people.
You in
Like
these
a lot of
streets."
people had dated you, but they didn't, like the word date was never used. It was just like, hey, they're feeling a vibe.
Right.
And they're saying like, "Hey, let's go get coffee. You free on Friday?" And I'm like, "Oh, sure. Let's go." And we would go get a coffee. And then I'd be like, "Well, whatever." Like, they just kind of like fade out. And then, or I guess I would fade out because I was just like, well, they're not like my best friend now, like whatever.
Yeah.
But then when I got on this show and the show hit big, so many people, that was like their claim or link into the show. Like, "Oh, I love New Girl. I used to date Hannah."
Yeah.
That's like when Moby said he went out with Natalie Portman. Do you remember that?
No.
Like about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, there was a thing on the news where Moby had just, as an aside, was like, "Oh yeah, I went out with Natalie Portman, like a date or something
Sure.
like that." And they asked her, and she's like, "What?"
Yeah.
She's like,
That's me.
"No."
No, never happened. Never happened.
That happens. That happened to me once. I'm not going to name any names, but there was someone that I had been friendly with,
Sure.
romantic, friendly, never my girlfriend, never dated. But when I tell this story about her, I just say it like, "Oh, this girl I dated, this, and this." We never actually dated, and it didn't dawn on me until the story came back to me.
Oh, sure.
When she was like, "We never dated," and I was like, "No." I was like, "But you told people we dated." I was like,
You're like, I was just saying.
But we went out and did some
I didn't want to.
stuff,
I didn't want to
so
be.
like,
I don't want to be
yeah.
specific. Like, "Oh, we did this. I just said dated to throw it out. I was like, "But no, I know we didn't date." So that happens, and I've done that on accident.
To say the words. I just was super clueless. Like, because in my human experience of my life, no one has ever come up and been like, "I think you're cool. I would love to take you out on a date." And me being like, "Yes, I also feel the same way. I would love to see you at that restaurant to eat food in this date situation." So when I watched this episode, I could so deeply feel what the Jess character was going through, where you're kind of like clocking like, wait a minute, hold up, why are you in a suit? Why are we drinking champagne?
I feel like it's not a date unless there's awkwardness at the very end when you're getting dropped off. Like, Jesus Christ. Maybe this is a date. What am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I had that moment happen once where someone did drop me off after I thought we just went to get dinner as friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of leaned over that middle part of the car and I was just like, all of a sudden I was like, Iman, the supermodel. I was like, my neck are long and beautiful all the way back. I said, excuse me.
Was this Kanye? Hannah dated Kanye back in the day.
Kanye?
The rumors that Lamorne likes to start to make my life seem more interesting because I have a very uninteresting life is kind of fun.
She dated Kanye. This is pre Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
The only thing about your private life I know is you walk around with cats on leashes.
That's true.
Wait, you do?
Yeah.
That is some of the most
Why?
like camping stuff with a cat on a leash.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to like let him loose in the woods.
No. I mean,
So I
if
had
you're
to
taking a
keep
cat, you have to have it on a leash.
Thank you. That's what I'm
But
saying.
that's not something you see every day.
You definitely don't.
No. I took them on a big camping trip to see the world because they were both very, very, very old and getting a little sick. And I realized, like, man, they need to, like, they've never heard the ocean or
That's
like been
amazing.
to a mountain. And so rented an RV and like took them on like this big like bucket list.
That's
trip.
amazing.
One of them is blind and like deaf, and so I took him to the ocean and just held him, and he felt the sand in the ocean.
Hannah.
Yep.
You need a movie about
This
that.
is what I'm doing with my life. I don't know. I go on dates. I go on romantic, life-ending trips with cats.
This has been years of this bullshit.
Takes all type to make the world go round.
She
I ain't hurt nobody.
Hannah would come with my feelings. Hannah would come to work and be like,
those.
I got the crazy. First of all, she'd ask you how your night was just so she could get to her story.
Sure.
I'd be like, what'd you do last night?
That's how it works, yeah.
First of all, then I would have to selectively listen.
Yeah, because I would do a lot
You
of
would
strange
give
things.
all the details.
Very, very detailed.
There's too many details.
And then,
I didn't need it.
and then she would go, Lamorne, woo, when I tell you. And I'd be like, okay, tell me. And she would like, I hope you're sitting down. I go, Hannah, we're in hair and makeup. I'm clearly sitting down. And then she would go, last night, me and my man, we did a puzzle and we finished about a bottle and a half of red wine. And I'd be like, yeah, then what? She's like, and then we fell asleep.
Wait, I listened to an episode of this. Isn't it white wine?
Is it white wine?
That's how I know that you're
And you were giving her
embellishing.
shit because you're like, who drinks white wine? Like,
Yes.
that's like a daytime
Me.
summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she would brag about this. And I'd go, Hannah, I just told you how I was. I'm not even going to get into it. But I'm like, your story, not interesting.
That's true.
It's
But I always
disappointing.
say, like, the dynamic of our friendship is like Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis in Unbreakable.
Oh, that's good.
See? Like,
like
we
Unbreakable.
both, thank you. Like, I understand it, the yin and the yang. We both have to exist for the world to be right.
It's all about
100%.
We have
balance.
nothing in common except for our existential need for the other one to exist, and we are forever bonded.
I get it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's dive.
Sense to me.
So we're at the end of this episode. We're at the end of this episode. Nick and Jess, they have a lovely, I think, multiple attempts at having dinner. One thing that was interesting was that Russell's already sitting down at the table. They decide they want to come back.
Get out.
And they literally made them move, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Insane.
It's
Yeah.
so funny. But then they end up back at the loft and they have a moment where she's trying to open, and it's a very, very, tense scene. That one made me go, ooh.
Jar
Oh.
and the beer gargle.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I was like, oh, they're going to do it.
It is a thing. I remember talking to a girlfriend once about like weird things that someone does that you don't know why, but just like makes you feel weird, and you can't help but that you feel really weird about it. And so when I watched like this episode, I was like, I could understand that people have. You're not in control of that. You don't get to choose those things.
Right.
That if someone does. Like, that made you feel weird.
I'm like very specific about mine. I'm like, I like the way she's naked and has
No,
sex
I'm
with
talking
me.
about non-sexual things.
Sex with me.
I'm like, ooh, that's
Non-sexual
ooh.
little things that just are like surprising. And
Oh,
you're just
okay.
like, oh.
The cool thing about this show is there's not like at this point, there's not a will they, won't they. There's a when will they.
Correct.
When will they?
It's not like The Office where it's like that show could have made a run and they never got together.
Yeah.
This, you know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, all right, I'm going to enjoy it. And when it happens, it happens.
That's what I love about, I mean, I really loved it in season 1. I remember talking to Liz about it when they did it with Cece and Schmidt, which was like, they slept together like almost instantly. And it was just what it was. But it was the emotional intimacy that was so hard for them and scary for them, and they fought it so deeply. And Liz was like, well, that's because that's how most people's experience. Like, as people are hooking up, and that's fine and doesn't feel complicated to them. But the emotional vulnerability and intimacy is hard. And the fact, again, I think it's the fact that she wrote how real dating life was happening, especially in that time period. And people just got it. And the fact that she just let Jess and Nick get messy and weird and dip in and dip out and get mad at each other about it and mad at themselves about it. And their roommates are now getting involved and frustrated with it. Right. It was the truth in that, I think, that is like the heartbeat of the show, is she kept telling the truth of how these real relationships worked.
Yeah.
I wanted to also just say, because I know we're wrapping this up, but one of the things that I didn't, and I was like, is this improvised too? That you said as Outside Dave is when you hear him shaving, and then you just hear him go, "Oh, there's bugs in there." And I was like,
I don't think that was improvised. Probably an alt, but yeah.
It made me laugh so hard. Like the delighted realization that there's bugs in the pubes. Made me
By the way,
laugh
I
so
remember ideas being floated around as the show was coming towards the last season. Someone floated around an idea that it turns out at the very end that Outside Dave actually owned the building. Which I was like, that would be amazing.
Which is so funny that when I was 19, I went to, me and some friends, we took a trip to California for the first time. And I remember we were in San Diego, and I remember after a night out, one of the people we were with was going to get a tattoo, and there was this kind of like strip mall right by the beach. There's a tattoo parlor there. There's like some bars, some restaurants or whatever. And there's this homeless guy that's just hanging out outside, right? Hanging out outside. Now, we've been drinking, and so we all sit down. We're like on like right by the beach, on boardwalk, beach, whatever. And we're sitting down and we're talking to this guy, and now we've assumed he's homeless. What we didn't realize, we realized later on after he told us that he owned that whole strip mall. He owned that whole strip mall. We were just like, oh.
Just real casual.
Beach bums are a real thing.
Yes.
But you know what? That's the truth. I feel like that's what's so wonderful about LA is that you never know in LA. People with money don't dress like they have any money.
Oh, no.
It's like, so you can't just like pick it out. You can't profile it.
Yeah.
You can't figure it out.
I
That's
have a
why.
buddy who owns a Ferrari, and he intentionally keeps it, one, dirty, and two, always wears like holes in his sweatpants, like holes in his shirt. They're not like stylish holes like how Justin Bieber might do it. He has like, he's genuinely like doesn't care with what he's about what he's wearing, and he has a lot of money, and he loves his car, but he intentionally keeps it filthy.
That's
like
amazing.
The outside looks like shit, and he's like, just, who cares?
Good for him.
Okay, so the tag of this is really funny. Back to Ron Funches.
Man, Ron. I mean, you can tell how much they must have loved it, because this was they had to get a lot done in this episode. You can tell there was a lot of story there to tell, a lot of exposition, flashbacks on like why it's weird between. Yeah, all this stuff. And they let him go like in the episode.
Yes.
For and usually those pops are fast, as you know, and then the whole tag of him singing Yorgos Michalis' song, Father Figure, and then the Mrs. Doubtfire song.
Oh, yeah.
One of the funniest things caught me off guard. I remember the first time I watched that episode, I do remember the first time, and only time besides last night, was I never knew that was shot. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Sure. And I don't think it was written like that or that funny, like at the table read. So it didn't stick in my head. Right. And I remember crying, just crying, because he was so funny in it.
We're going to go to break, and when we come back, Hannah, myself, and Steve, we're all going to mess around a little bit.
Come on.
It is a sexual thing, Steve.
No, it's definitely not. Oh, not that. Look at that. Oh, not that. Look at that. Oh, not that. Look at that.
And we are back, babe.
Yeah,
So I asked this question earlier.
Yeah.
Do you have any first dates that competes with the one Nick and Jess went on?
You got to ask all these people that said they dated me because I was not there on those dates. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was not there in a date capacity. If you went on a date with me and said you went on a date with me, share your story. I'd love to hear it. I was fully unaware.
I've gone on a bunch of first dates.
Yeah.
Like a bunch. Most of which didn't go anywhere because I'm single right now. But the ones that ended up in like longer relationships weren't a traditional first date.
Same, yeah.
I dated someone for 3 years. Our first date was she was like, "Hey, I'm at the driving range if you want to meet me there." It wasn't I didn't ask her out. I was like, "We should hang out one day." She was like, "Hey, I'm at the driving range right now if you want to join." And I was like, well, okay. And I met up at the driving range. We ended up dating
this
for
is
3
the
years.
thing though, is this now just like an old fashioned idea of like asking someone out on a date? And maybe that's why I didn't realize I was on dates because I was expecting like a formal invite with a title to what our arrangement was going to be.
Yeah.
And then maybe just people don't do that.
I think there's a lot of, hey, we should hang out sometime.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's like a really gray area.
100%.
Yeah.
Because also people are afraid of rejection. So you don't want to be too formal
Right.
and put pressure on that person.
Yeah.
But if I can get them to hang out with me, then they'll realize that, which is basically this whole episode. But then it becomes so confusing. We didn't talk about this in the recap, and now I'm mad about it because what do you think was on the valet cards? Like, what did they write?
Oh, that's right. We never find out.
We never
We find out later, I believe.
Yeah.
We find out
do?
later.
I just thought it was such a awesome moment because then you see Russell basically do them a solid. He's just like, oh, wow, you guys.
Yeah.
No, I'm running off with this thing. Like, I can't. It's too hard. But it
In
was
my
such
head, it's like each one of them wrote something completely nonsensical. Like
Yeah.
Jake wrote apples,
Yeah.
and she wrote puppies.
Yeah.
Something.
But she's writing forever, right?
Yeah.
She keeps writing and keeps writing. And I think he wrote like, I love her. And that's what my brain said. And then she's just going like, well, I don't know. And I don't want to fall apart. Like, it's like that whole like inner monologue was going because it was so.
No spoilers.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's no spoil. I don't know if that's what it is. I don't remember what
You don't
happens.
remember? Oh.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
That's why I'm good for this rewatch podcast. I'm watching it as we go.
Good for you.
I can't remember.
Okay,
right.
so one of the questions was how many takes of Ron Funches singing do they have? I think they have 1 million.
Was it different songs? I mean, you were there.
No, I think there was like 2 or 3 songs. I think maybe 3 songs.
Because you have to clear that.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I read the note earlier.
Yeah.
You know, how he was discovering, because I think some of the first takes weren't as aggressive. And then as time went on,
He got really into it.
And part of this question is, did I break? I think I only had 1 straight take.
How can you not?
It was, it literally in tears.
There's
when
no
you're-
way I'd be able to hold it together. It'd be a mess because it's solid too. They don't they're not editing. Like
Yeah.
it's just 1 take.
Yeah.
They play it all the way through.
Fun fact: when I was there was a lot of background in like a holding area, and he had a cast chair, but he was hanging out in the background area, holding area. And I think it was outside in like a tent or something like that. I'm not joking. I genuinely thought, I think that homeless man is lost. I was like, hey, and I didn't say anything to anybody, but I was like, that man, I don't think. And I was like,
Should I get the AD? And
I was like, why is he just kind of lurking around? And then, because a lot of times you check out of the scene. Like I knew what I was about to
Sure.
shoot, but then I was like, oh, that's the dude.
It was just too real for you.
because he wasn't hanging out by his
Sure.
chair. You know what I mean? Yeah.
yeah,
He
this
looked
has
too
to
much
have
of the
been
part.
like one of the first acting gigs for Ron. He's a very funny stand-up.
Yeah, very
But
funny.
this has to have been one of his first like.
I think
acting gigs.
the way he described it, I think it is.
Yeah,
I think
the
it is.
nerves around it.
Yeah.
Okay, last question in this mess around, Steve. What was your favorite outside Dave moment that you remember?
The whole show or this episode?
The whole
Whole
show.
show. Unless you want to come back.
Yeah, please come back anytime.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all fun. The most fun was when I would have multiple days with you guys.
Yeah.
There's another episode where Zoe's dating I don't remember the character's name, Julian.
Yeah, Julian
yeah,
Morris.
Julian Morris.
And Max is dating Zoe Lister-Jones. And there's it's something to do with noise, like construction outside of the loft, and there had to be like a town hall meeting, and you say something to Schmidt just before he's about to go up and speak about his suit not fitting right, and he can't get through his speech because he's like tugging because he thinks he looks terrible, and for some reason, outside Dave is in the town hall meeting. I'm sitting there, and we shot it at the Masonic Temple on Highland.
On Highland.
Highland, and like right near the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Franklin.
And Highland and Franklin. And Schmidt has a breakdown. He's like, I can't talk. My suit doesn't fit anymore. And I say something, and I think I improvised this. I said, if you want, I'll give you my tailor's number. It's 7.
I mean,
But
that's
anytime,
amazing.
and that was the same episode where you guys are doing like a phone bank in the.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Anytime
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
to hang out for like long periods of time.
Dude, well, anytime you're on set, we loved it.
Oh, it was always so great. That was always such a fun thing because it was a pretty intense show to shoot in terms of like the hours, and it was kind of constant, lots of rewrites, lots of alts. But it was always fun to sit there and look at like the call sheet in the morning and get to see who was coming. And if we knew it was you, we knew it was going to be a great day and we were all going to get to laugh.
Did you guys have a long drive? Like Fox lot is like not really central to a lot of stuff.
It was. Fox was like a bit of a drive, but I remember 2 things. One, I lived in West Hollywood, like near the Grove, but our call times were so early. And most of us, if you were working that day, you were there all day.
Oh, yeah.
Because they would go faster on certain things and slower. So you wouldn't kind of get like, your call time's 11:30 in the morning because you just have one scene for us. It'd be like, everybody's here at 4:30 a.m. We're going all day. We'll figure out when we're going to do your thing. We might want to put you in something. So that's why it was like a little more of an intense show to shoot, I feel like. So it took me like 9 minutes because I was going at 4 a.m.
Once you guys got established, it was great because you used to have to go downtown LA to do the exteriors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then we just rebuilt those on the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally they rebuilt those. Yeah.
I had to go to set a lot earlier than people. Well, not really set. For about a season and a half, I want to say, I forget. At least one full season, I was driving to a barbershop in the morning to get my hair cut, then go to set.
Wow.
Because they didn't have a barber.
Yeah, that changed. That did change.
That changed quickly. I was like, man, I'm waking up at 3 a.m., 3:30 to get to the barbershop at, 4:30, 5 in the morning to be on set by 6:30. And I was like, this is crazy. Because they weren't counting that as as turnaround time.
Yeah, that's not.
So I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of growth in the industry around certain things that I think also was all of our first times like on a big show.
Yeah.
For a lot of us. And I think that we didn't know certain things you could just like ask for.
Yeah.
But they weren't industry
Figure that out
standard.
quick.
Yeah, that's right.
This is not supposed to be happening, right?
Yeah, this feels wrong.
I'm like, fuck me.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, folks. We're going to go to break.
We're going to sell some shit.
All right, folks, we are back. We're at the end of our episode.
Lamorne is the king of segues.
That is so great.
Yeah.
By the way, you went to a break and you started talking to me, and I didn't know we were back earlier.
Yeah,
I just kind of figured it out.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I was like, "Oh, we're back," and she's asking me questions. Okay,
We're back in the room.
folks, we're at the end of our road here with the lovely, lovely Steve Agee, and played outside Dave, one of the most lovable TV characters of all time, one of the most hilarious TV characters of all time.
Some of the best lines in all of the New Girl universe, for sure.
We hope that he comes back.
Please.
anytime.
So tomorrow,
I'm going to be in Atlanta for 6 months. It might have to be
Zoom
via
in.
phone.
Yeah.
or
Zoom
but
in.
yeah, tell
I
us,
would
what are you
love
doing
to.
in Atlanta?
What's that?
Can you tell us what you're doing in
Season
Atlanta?
2 Peacemaker. We start in just a couple weeks.
Come on. Is that so fun to do? I can't imagine.
Best job. It's really fun.
I love superhero stuff.
Man.
Oh, shit. Well, you can look for them there. You can look for them here. We're on Hulu. We're on Peacock. We're everywhere you can, stream shit from. But in the meantime, please go ahead and follow us on Instagram at The Mess Around Pod and go buy some of our merch. I don't know. I might stick your face on a mug.
Ooh, that'd be great.
We'll give you a piece.
Ooh-wee.
We'll give you a piece. We'll be back next week with Bachelorette Party, not to be confused with Bachelor Party.
That's your private life.
Yeah. That was The Mess Around. This has been an iHeartMedia production. Our executive producer is Joelle Monique. Our engineer and editor is Mia Taylor. Additional production from Daniel Goodman, Wendy Heisler, and Kyle Chevron. Our theme song was written and composed by Ronald Jukebox Jackson. So we're going to catch you next time. Bye.